Hello and welcome. You're watching a special edition on News9. You know what? If there is one issue which has remained rather unsolved and mysterious in both pre and post-independent India, then it certainly is the death of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. For decades, governments and multiple commissions were involved in unraveling the mystery, whether Netaji died in a plane crash in 1945 or did he not. And now there's a book about which we are going to talk about and which you just saw on your screens, titled The Bose Deception, Declassified by Anuj Dhar and Chandrachur Ghose, which most painstakingly answers many bewildering questions. Anuj Dhar is a journalist turned author, and Chandrachur Ghose is also a columnist and a very well-known public speaker. Let me just go across and speak to them on this book, but let me add just one thing first. I think, and I'm sticking my neck out and saying it, I think this is one of the most seminal works to have come out in recent times. Hi, both. How are you doing?
Very well.
And
thank you, Sudha.
Thank you for the kind word. I mean, I would rather appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right. And when one sees a good book, you know, one knows it, considering that at News9 we spend a lot of time on books. Anuj Dhar, let's go turn by turn, and please feel free, Chandrachur, to jump in whenever you feel the need to. Anuj Dhar,
Sure.
would you agree that the book hinges mainly on two aspects, you know, regarding unraveling the mystery of Bose's death? First is our, as a country, complete inability to not only preserve papers of historical value, but also, you know, a kind of sort of political apathy when it came to the death of, or if you want to call disappearance, in 1945. Anuj Dhar.
I would say this is not about, I think it's mostly about the official secrecy. I mean, the government has been very, very, keen about this entire matter, right from 1947, 46, when we had the interim government in place. So the government, so records, when you see the type of records that we have now in this country, forget what you got in other countries. In India, about 990 files were released by Ministry of Defense in 1997. So that's the stuff we're talking about in terms of the breadth of the entire case. Then we got 1,000+ files released in Manmohan Singh's era, 2012 or 14. The current government has released about 305 files. So the government is absolutely very keen. They are taking a note of everything, and we are not even aware of how much they've got in the intelligence archives. So the government of India has been following up on this issue like anything, and because it's a British legacy, British started the investigation, but government of India took on from thereafter. And but what they have done is not to convey the facts to the people of this country. So this is what we feel. It's a deception. It's a deception on Netaji's side that he had to create deception to escape the war theater. It is also deception from our side, because the government of India has concealed the whole issue. Let me put it that way.
All right. So you're saying a lot of things, that great job, but then there is also concealment, there is deception, and that's what makes this book very, very fascinating, where you unravel every thread slowly and painstakingly. Chandrachur Ghose, let me come to you. You know, the snooping on Bose's family. I mean, you've written almost an entire chapter, or let's say around 20 pages on it, and I went through it. The snooping on Bose's family, including immediate family members as well as distant relatives. Now, the case of a 15-year-old boy, I found the most ridiculous. You know, we don't live in the era of writing letters, but I'm talking about then. A 15-year-old boy who wrote to Shaulmari Bose inquiring if Subhash was alive, and that too ridiculously was put under the scanner. As the book suggests, Pandit Nehru was fully aware of this snoop code, and almost like the Bose's family, I mean, there's a feeling I get that maybe the Prime Minister felt, the future Prime Minister, if you would like to be very specific, felt that the Bose's family was kind of disruptive, Chandrachur. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, from this entire snooping phenomenon, two or three things come out very clearly. The first thing is that the government was following anybody and everybody who was in touch with the Bose family, particularly after Subhas's disappearance. The most important person in the family, from the political perspective, was his elder brother, Sarat Chandra Bose. But Sarat Chandra Bose died in 1950 or 51, around that time. And after that, there was nobody in the family who could shake up the political scene in the I mean, in the national sense. There were local players, they were important players within the state, some within the city of Kolkata, but not beyond. So there was no reason why the central government intelligence bureau, the
Right.
state CID, the state special branch, and other states would join in monitoring all correspondences with the family. And this went on till the 1970s. Exactly till when, we do not know, and that is all the more reason why all intelligence files
Right.
should be declassified and we should know all the facts. That's number one. So I mean, why does a government do that? You are basically tailing not only the family members but also close associates, former
Right.
associates of Subhash Chandra Bose, people who were in the INA, and as you mentioned, even not sparing a small kid who's writing a
Yes.
letter to Sharad Bose.
Yeah.
So even any government will do that only when they do not believe the story of Subhash
Yes.
Bose's death in the plane crash. So that is where
Absolutely.
the second aspect comes in, that the government maintained a public stand, but inside working of the government shows that it did not believe in
Yeah.
its own story.
Right. So
If you
talking
believe
about
that the man died in 1945, you would not follow him.
Absolutely. And let me go to Anuj. Quickly tell me, I'm going to read something in this context, what Chandrachur has said. Surya, Bose, he alleged it was very convenient for Jawaharlal Nehru when Netaji did not turn up after 1945, 18th of August. Whether Nehru had a hand in the conspiracy to keep Bose out of India or get rid of him. What happened after that is the bigger question. Now, you see, this is Nehru saying, Anuj. So like Chandrachur says, that unless they did not believe the theory of a plane crash and his death stroke disappearance, why would someone like Nehru speak like this, Anuj Dhar?
I mean, we are bewildered. I mean, it's bewildering. I mean, forget about this. The government had the intelligence report suggesting Subhash was probably in Russia.
Yeah.
And the only way to find that out was to talk to Russians about it. So, well, luckily, as luck would have it, Panditji's own sister was our first ambassador to Russia. But we find that the government of India, officially on record at least, they never bothered to inquire about Subhash Bose's, presence in Russia for all these years. It's only when VP Singh became the prime minister, very meekly they put this question, whether do you have any records or not. So this is also another aspect. If Netaji did not die, what happens? So all reports which are available from the American side, from the British side, they are suggesting that he was probably in Russia after his death, which is what he was planning to, of course. So the only way this matter can be resolved is by going to the Russians and asking them. They have their embassy in Delhi. This is a very big part of this book, and we have focused on it because when we met Prime Minister Modi, we requested him that he should take up this matter with the Russians at the highest level, because this has been the trend for many years now. The government of India, whenever the approach has been made from the time of VP Singh, it's been a very low level kind of approach. So we need a highest level kind of interaction with the government of India and Russia.
Right.
What it has not been done, and unfortunately, even Modi ji, even though he said very clearly in front of us that he is going to talk to Putin ji about it, as he put it, but we have no information whatsoever whether the matter was taken up. So there was a media report that Sushma ji had taken up with the matter with the Russian counterpart, but nothing about it has come out in public domain. I mean the details of it, what happened. So this is where it's all stuck. So the plane crash theory is out. He was probably in Russia. But we have to find out from the Russians whether he was there or not. But Indian government has been cagey about approaching Russians, and they are not talking to them. So that is where it's the whole story, the whole mystery.
So talking about the cagey aspect of this, Anuj, I am asking you this question, and maybe then request Chandrachur to come in. Let's now talk about the reactions from the two main characters at the time of India's struggle for independence, Gandhi and Nehru. Even as the Mahatma sounded very ambivalent, he commiserating first and then doubting the entire theory. Jawaharlal Nehru in your book comes across as someone who just wanted to get it over with and move on. I'm going to quote something from that. He said the last reply before he died in May 1964, to quote Nehru, he says, "I agree with you that something should be done to finalize the question of Netaji's death, but it is not quite clear to me how far it will be proper for me to ask the Chief Justice of India to look into this matter." Okay. Now, Anuj, I am asking you, how do you compare the reactions of the Mahatma? Do you think it's, that's what the Mahatma would have done, considering we've all read Mahatma? And Nehru. Nehru seems to be irritated. He says, let's move on. It's a young country. I can hear him say, I have to build this nation. How do you look at it, Anuj?
Well, Panditji had time, a lot of time, because Gandhiji, unfortunately, was killed in 1948. So, but Panditji had a lot of time when he was prime minister. So he had access to all the information, especially the intelligence reports and whatnot, which must have been flowing in. What is intriguing about Gandhiji is that publicly, as you said, he took this stance that Netaji has died. Initially, I had my doubt, but now I think that he has died. But what we have uncovered, of course, the correspondence that was he had with Louis Fisher, the famous American journalist, Pulitzer Award-winning journalist. So when Fisher met him, so Gandhiji had it conveyed to him that he thought that Subhash was in Russia, and that if he comes back to this country, there's nothing he would be able to do. So, and then what we find even more interesting that the Fisher thereafter, he goes to Moscow and he makes further inquiries about, Netaji there. And he at least, figures out from at least from one ambassador of Italy that Subhash probably did not die. So this goes that deep. I mean, even Gandhiji was aware, so to speak, that Subhash was in Russia, but then he was not able to convey this to the public in general.
All right. Okay, Chandrachur, I want you to react on this, the reaction of Gandhi and Nehru, but also this entire thing about trying to paint him as an anti-national, as somebody who was working at crossroads with what, the Indians wanted. This kind of an imagery which was created. I mean, let me also now, say this, that I had the good fortune to edit Leonard Gordon's book on Bose, and he spoke to me and he said, why is it that people think like this about him? Why is it in popular culture we don't see Bose so much as we see only certain people? Chandrachur Ghosh.
Well, I would contradict that. I don't believe that line of argument because Bose is present, has been present, and we are talking about him because he has been present in the popular culture, not in official culture. He has been sidelined in the official culture where the central positions are taken by Pandit Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. And to some extent, some other minor figures have been given some place, but not Bose. That is because, I mean, we have constructed a narrative of how we obtained our independence, that it was the non-violent path reached by Gandhiji, which gave us our independence, which
Right.
is, I mean, as far from truth as it can be. We know how it happened. We have discussed it in this book also. I mean, I'm not going into the details, but everybody knows the impact of the IAA trials, the mutinies in the Royal Indian Air Force, in the Royal Indian Navy, the strikes by the student organizations in railways, in post office, everywhere. It was a volcanic situation. And all because of the impact of the IAA trials. That's how the fire was lit up. But even before that, when the Quit India movement was going on, uh, and the movement was completely demolished and subdued within a few weeks. The underground movement survived for a few months. And in those movements, those people who carried on the underground subversive movements, they were very much pro Subhas. And this was a fact which was not liked by the Communist Party at that time and definitely not by the Congress leadership. So everybody knew that Subhash Bose was an alternative, probably, and definitely history speaks for itself when we put him as the only leader, national leader, who electorally defeated Mahatma Gandhi, which was unthinkable at that time
Yes.
in the 1939-40 and of that period. So he was a figure who captured the public imagination. And that is the reason why his memory has survived till date, 80 years after the so-called plane crash, and people are asking questions. We
Right.
have revived it. The government has done everything in its power to suppress the question, suppress all information. We have been fortunate to
Which
fight hard
government?
and
No,
dig out the information.
Chandrachur, which government has been wanting to suppress information?
Well, there has been only one party which has dominated from the time of independence.
All right. I mean,
And,
that's
and, and,
saying,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, Chandrachur, I want to now come to the other aspect of it, the Shaulmari Sadhu. Very interesting chapter, reads like a film script. How a sadhu was mistaken to be Subhash Bose, living under disguise near Kolkata. Point is, someone with Nehru's temperament, and we all know, the kind of socialist, almost teetering on, being an agnostic kind of a prime minister that we had, or a man first and then a prime minister. Someone with Nehru's temperament firstly emphatically denies any such thing. Again, I read Nehru through it like almost like a, a grey beard who dismisses you first and then says, okay, let me listen to you. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how, maybe impatient as it were. So he first denies ki no such things, no sadhu vadu. And then he sends SM Ghosh to investigate it. Also, what is about the presence of director I.B. Mullik and his deputy Handu? I just think it's paranoia much. What are they trying, Chandrachur?
No, this is not paranoia, actually. You just read out one letter from Panditji, I mean, talking about his helplessness, his indecision, whether it would be right to ask the Chief Justice of India to investigate into Bose mystery, his disappearance. Now, anybody can question any aspect of Nehru, but what Pandit Nehru's one thing that cannot be questioned by anybody was his intellect. He had a supreme intellect. He knew what needed to be done, what could be done, and he had the entire resources of the government of India at his disposal. He knew exactly to be done. And if he was so helpless that he couldn't make up his mind, then the question comes, what you just mentioned, that a pause of IB officials are there. Again, state government, intelligence, local police, the place was swarming with intelligence officers sending daily reports from the locality, the place called Falakada, Shaulmari in the Falakada district, to Kolkata, and from Kolkata to New Delhi. So daily, I mean, the file is fat, thick. If you read the correspondence, you're surprised that why is the government of India and the government of West Bengal dedicating so much resource, so much manpower to this one man whom they could have just said that this man is a thug, he is an imposter, and his real identity. The government of India and the government of West Bengal came to know his identity very early in the day, in the 1962 or 63, around that time only. But they never gave out his identity. They wanted to keep the mystery hanging there. So and then the question of sending Surendra Mohan Ghosh. Surendra Mohan Ghosh, for your viewers who don't know him, was a revolutionary belonging to
Yes.
the Jugantar group, and he was one of the earlier senior partners of Subhash Bose. So who knew Subhash Bose from the year
Right,
1921?
okay.
Subhash Bose used to call him Madhu Dada. So as an elder brother, and he knew intimately. They fell out during the 1939 re-election, Congress presidential re-election.
Okay.
But that's another story where Surendra Mohan Ghosh became a follower of Pandit Nehru. I mean, in a letter we find that he is comparing Pandit Nehru to avatars of, Krishna. He's almost like Krishna, Buddha
Yeah,
of
okay.
that age. So that kind of psychopathic behavior apart, he's sending Madhu Ghosh to Shaulmari, whereas Morarji Desai is waiting for information in London for a confirmation from Surendra Mohan Ghosh whether that man is Suhas or not.
So
That
you
is not
basically,
paranoia.
yeah, it's not
That is not
paranoia.
paranoia.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah, you don't think it's paranoia. When you read it, you feel because there's a sadhu there. Maybe I'm biased. Anuj Dhar, would you like to speak about the interesting aspects of the book? Is my intent to bring it out so that people go buy this book. You need to buy this book. This is a fantastic book. So, Anuj, speak about the falsification of the proof of death and how they were said to be exchanged with a soldier called Ukura. You know, later Justice Mukherjee, of course, does say how the so-called death of Bose and the subterfuge surrounding it was perhaps a plan to facilitate his escape. Briefly, because I'm coming to the end of it,
Well,
but this
this is the
Okura,
basic-
the
this is the
Okura
basic
thing
thread.
is extremely interesting and intriguing.
I'm glad you raised it because that's the basic and the most important thread. I mean, this is the evidence part. When the British had the investigation done, like back in 46 around that time, they came to a conclusion that the whole story of Netaji's death was based on eyewitness accounts. And these eyewitnesses were conflicting each other. They were making statements which were not matching each other. So the only way to confirm the eyewitness accounts was to go to place of occurrence of the plane crash, which is Taipei, and have the records of hospital, etc., checked. So this is what they were trying to do, but unfortunately they were not able to, maybe because the war had come to close and they were packing up their bags from India. So they were not able to do a proper inquiry. This is what we gather from the files. Beginning 1946, government of India got enrolled, and if not in 46, at least by 1951, they were fully aware that the hospital records are and the cremation records are not telling with the eyewitness accounts, so which means the story is not standing up to the scrutiny.
Yes.
So this is what's been happening over the years in 60s and 70s and 80s. The whole story about Netaji's death is all about locating those records. So the best shot was given by Justice Mukherjee, and it was in early 2000s when he went to Japan and these countries, and I played a part in it because I was a journalist. It finally came out that Japanese, this has an elaborate plan to ensure Subhash Bose escapes towards Russia. So as part of the plan, they used a dead body of a Japanese soldier, Ichiro Kora. His body was passed off as Subhash Bose's body, and there are all the records in the hospital records and the commission records are in his name. So this explodes the entire story of Subhash Bose's death. This is the legally the most important point of, more the biggest evidence.
All right.
Justice Mukherjee told us in private that he had many reasons to pull down the Priyanka story, but this was the most legally most strongest point.
All
The documentary evidence is not at all
Okay.
matching with the
All
eyewitness
right.
account. It is very
So,
sketchy.
one of the very intriguing aspects, Chandrachur Ghosh, I think you'll take the last question as it were. Anuj just spoke about escape to Russia, the intent as it were of Subhash Bose. But he did want to go to Russia end of 1945, and of course he was in constant touch with the Japanese for his mission to come to fruition as it were. I don't want to give out all the spoilers because people these days just watch interviews and don't go buy books. We need to buy books only. But tell me, Chandrachur, how was the plane crash a cover up? You think it was the plane crash a cover up for his final mission to just go to Russia?
Yes, I mean, like you, I would not give out the full
Yeah,
story here,
I
but I
won't.
would give a few pointers. Is
Yeah.
that to understand this, you have to understand a bit of Subhash Bose's personality. That he was a man who planned far ahead of any event that he was planning. And he did not have only one plan throughout his life. If you read the biography which I have written after Gordon, it needed a refresher course. So I have written his biography, which came out in 2022. If you read that book, you will find constantly he is reinventing himself whenever he faces obstacles, and he is making three, four alternatives for every bit of plan. So if plan A does not work, he has plan B to fall upon. If plan B does not work, he has plan C to fall upon. And here at the fag end of the Second World War, we see him uh, planning for the post-war situation from around March, April 1945. The war ended in August 1945, but he was planning what to do next if things don't go his way from April, March. Around that time, he has been planning and talking with the Japanese generals and all. Much like his escape from India, when he escaped from India in 1941, people came to know much later about it, and
Right.
then stories came out. But when I started looking at the documents, I was surprised, astounded that he was planning his escape from India, going out of India, at least for 1 year. He had sent his men to find out the best route to reach Russia. So he had kind of made up his mind to reach Russia. He could not, he had to go to Germany. That was the result of the circumstances. But that was Subhash Bose. He made his plans far ahead of the actual event.
Okay.
And it was the same thing. He had chalked out everything. Of course, there are last minute exigencies, and you can't avoid that. It's a wartime thing. Not everything is available to you at the right time. There are many players, too many players. The allied forces are entering Japan, Southeast Asia. So your scope is limited. It's the window is getting shorter. So things had to be improvised. But this plan of his going out of the Southeast Asian theater of war and to raise another front of war to enter India with an army was there all the time, and he was just looking for the routes and the best ways and means to do it. And the Japanese were aware of it. They were, and a large segment of the topmost Japanese generals and politicians were helping him with that.
All right. And last question, I just have 1 minute left. Anuj, Dhar, do you think that when you look back, and not because he is the subject of your book or other books, because Chandrachur has already written one, which I've heard about, but I want to ask you that he is one of the most original, as it were. Everybody is. You can turn around and say, so was, Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, so was, of course, Nehru, Gandhi, Patel, several others. But I think amongst all these, someone who looked at independence differently was Subhash Bose. Would you concur?
Of course, and then of course you have to also admit. I mean, the basic fact that Subhash was much younger. When we think and we look back and we think of we tend to put all of them in the same position, same pedestal. But Subhash was much, much younger. I mean, he was about 22 years younger than Sardar Patel.
All right.
He was about 9 years younger than Panditji. So this man was much younger. He has very bright and fresh ideas. Older people were thinking of probably older times. They still have some hangovers, but this gentleman had completely fresh mind, and of course he had this zeal, and he had spent so much of time in exile in Europe. So he was different in a variety of ways, but age was also one big factor. He was young, dynamic, and especially the youth liked him a lot.
On that note, thank you so much, both Anuj Dhar and Chandrachur Ghosh, for joining us on this broadcast.
Thank you.
It was absolutely delightful. Thank you very much indeed.
So kind.
Thank you very much.
So that was our special edition on your screens right now, The Bose Deception Declassified by Chandrachur Ghosh and Anuj Dhar. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon. Goodbye.